Hey everyone, my name is Roy, and in today's recording I'll show you how you can bring together multiple Node.js microservices using GraphQL. We'll be using StepZen to create a schema for each of these microservices, and then we'll be using StepZen again to make combinations between different schemas of different microservices. For this, I've created a sample application which you can find a link for in the description of this video, or you can watch along. So in this directory, I've created multiple microservices. One is called out, the other one is called post and users. As you can imagine, the one for out is doing authentication, while post and users both give you information about either one. In this application, I can run npm start, as these microservices are built with Node.js. This does two things for me. It will start the microservices, and it will also create a local tunnel URL, which I can use to go to any of these services from the internet. So if I would take the example for posts, I can just copy paste this and paste it into my browser. And then the microservice is exposing data on the endpoint API/posts. First, it will show a friendly reminder from local tunnel that you shouldn't be using any of these URLs in production. Let's save to go ahead, and I can just click to continue. And this will show my REST API endpoint that is exposed by my microservice. So if I zoom in a little, you can see it returns an array with different objects. And here I can also use pet parameters, an example to get the very first post, or use query parameters to filter on author. This is important to know, as we'll be using these endpoints to create a GraphQL schema. So in example, if I would copy paste this one, I can head over to my projects and go into the folder for the posts microservice. And in here I can just run StepZen import curl and paste my API endpoint. So this will already generate a GraphQL schema for me, but we can make this a bit nicer by using the flags to give a query name, which can be posts, and then also a query type, which will be the return type of this query. And then when I just press enter, StepZen will fetch my API endpoint and then generate the schema for me, which you can find in the post direction in the directory curl. And then I can even rename this directory using the CLI if I wanted to. And here you can see it used my endpoint, and then it created a type for the return of my GraphQL for my REST API endpoint, and then it created this query with this name. And of course, I can do more interesting stuff, because as you imagine, we already saw we can also filter on author. Get rid of this, and you can say author is 1, make this post by user, and then leave everything else beside. This will again call this API endpoint, but now with the query parameter in it. And then of course I need to make sure that I use the latest local tunnel, because I'm using Node.js together with NodeMon. So every time I create a new file or directory inside any of these directories, my local tunnel will be regenerated. Replace the local tunnel URL with the latest one that was generated for me. If I press enter, it should now be able to run StepZen curl on this new endpoint. As you can see, it created a new directory, which I could have prevented by renaming it for my query. Here you can see it as a new query, post by user, with the parameter of author. You see nothing has been appended to the URL because StepZen uses auto-completion. So unless you want to take full control over it, it will use the auto-completion for you. But now I can actually go ahead and delete these files, as I won't be using them because I've already created a file. You can see posts is in there, post by users in there as well. But in here, I've added an access token because this API route actually needs authentication, something which I've turned off before to make the demo a bit nicer. Save this again. And now you can see it has redeployed, or actually it has made all my endpoints available on different local tunnel routes again. And these local tunnel routes is something I actually need, because if you would be going to the GraphQL schema I generated before, you can see there's a variable name called hostname, which is coming from a configuration file. And this configuration file is here, config.yaml. And in here I need to make sure that all the host names are in there. So the host name for posts, in example, just put it in here. And then the host name for users, something else I can put in here. And then finally the host name for authentication service. And now I can just go back to my main directory. And in here I can run StepZen start. This will take all the schemas I've generated for the authentication service, for the post service and the user service and deploy them to StepZen. And these will become available on an endpoint called API/data layer, which is being deployed to my account and also available from any production client using this curl or just this endpoint. But for now, we'll be using a localhost GraphQL playground. Check and copy paste. And then inside my browser, I can find this URL. And then from here to the Explorer, I can find different endpoints, different queries I can use. In example, let's start by getting a token, which we can do by using the query token, which will generate the authentication token for me, which is this one, that I would then need to query any of the other endpoints. Example, if I want to query the posts, I need to provide the Nexus token, and I can request all the fields I want. But this actually shows you need two different endpoints in order to get the information you want. You need to query the token, and you also need to query the posts. But if I go back to my schema, I actually came up with something clever for this. So if I would be going to my post schema, you can see I have a query called getPosts, which doesn't take the access token, but instead it uses a sequence custom directive. And this directive is used to execute different queries in steps. So instead of having to do it manually from your client or the GraphQL playground, instead you can use a net sequence directive, which will call this query first, and then whatever is the response of the query token, it will be passed to posts. So the query token will have the access token for me, which will be passed to my posts endpoint. And then of course it will be used to make a request to the API endpoint. So what I can do here is get rid of these two queries, and instead run getPosts. And get the same fields I have over there, which are author, ID, and an image URL. Now I can just run this and it will get the same information for me, except it will also get the access token. Unless there is some issue, this will resolve all fine. And this way, this becomes even easier for you to build using GraphQL. And instead of using the access token I've used here, you can of course use any authentication service out there. An example, Auth0 of Okta, or whatever you're using for authentication. And in the schema, there are way more clever things. If you would go to the data layer GraphQL file, you can see there's also queries to collect information from different endpoints, and also to get more data in sequence. So in this sequence, an example, get a token first, then I will get a user, then I will get the post for all these users, and then I will merge this data together. And these are really clever things you can do to really customize the information you're getting from different microservices, because this is taking data from a user, from the post, and then it will bring them all together from this one GraphQL schema. And this is one way to start building a data layer for GraphQL using microservices. And these Node.js microservices can also be microservices built with other frameworks or programming languages. In the end, the only thing that matters is the API they expose. If they expose a REST API or even expose a GraphQL API, you can bring them together using StepZen. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to our channel and also leave a comment in case you have any questions. And with this, I hope to see you soon again.